Hello everyone, this is Jotto, and welcome to the Solforge Weekly. Now, for this week, we are going to be going over a deck which I play extensively, although not at the moment because I'm preparing for a rather large qualifier this weekend, which I will do a tournament report on next week. But anyway, for this week, we're going to be going over a deck that I played for months, and this was my main deck and constructed for a long time. So we're going to go over the actual deck, and then we're also going to play a game at the end. So anyway, the deck is called Deathbomb, or Tarsus Deathbomb, or whatever you want to call it, Weirwood Patriarch deck, tokens, anything. A lot of people know it by either Lifebomb or Deathbomb. But the deck revolves around making token creatures, essentially, by playing things like Ether Hounds, which when you play it comes in with another 3/3, another 5/5, then another 7/7 at each level in a different lane. Or things like Echo Wisp, which come in with 2 copies or more at later levels, things like that. And the aim of the deck is to buff them up. So let's look at all the ways of actually buffing the cards first. The first card, which is what a lot of people call the deck by, being Tarsus Deathweaver, is a card which, first of all, has very good stats. It's an Necrim card. It has 5/6 stats, 9/10, and 15/16. And whenever a creature you control enters the field without being played from your hand, being the key thing, so not when you play it, but when, say, a token creature is summoned off another card, it gains a boost, being +2/+2, +4/+4, +6/+6. Now, the reason this is notable is things like Blight Tusk Sower, which summons a 1/1, a 3/3, or a 5/5 at each level. If you have the appropriate level Tarsus, then that token becomes a 3/3, then a 7/7, and then a 12/12. So, 12/12? 11/11. Yeah, 11/11. So it actually is a huge boost to your board control, and also having stats that large is pretty notable. The second major buff creature is Weirwood Patriarch, which is played in a lot of decks nowadays, but this deck utilizes it to the extreme, essentially, where whenever you play Weirwood Patriarch, anything with 3 or less attack, 5 or less attack, or 7 or less attack, depending on the level of the card, gets a buff. +2/+2, +4/+4, +6/+6. The actual stats on it are also crazy, by the way. Level 1 stats are very good. It will trade with most things. Level 2 and 3 will trade with maybe 1 or 2 of the same level. Very strong stats-wise. But the actual effect is the main reason we are playing it, because a lot of cards in the deck actually summon things with low attack, like Ether Hounds I showed earlier. And as a result, you can pump through a lot of things. Another thing it's very good against is things like Epidemic, which the deck does actually play, so I can showcase here. Epidemic lowers the stats of everything, so if you get Epidemicked and then you play Weirwood Patriarch, it negates the Epidemic, essentially. And if you play a higher level Weirwood than the Epidemic was, it actually boosts you above where you originally were. Very strong card, one of the best cards in the metagame at the moment. And the last 2 cards to go over, the major one is Ferocious Roar. Now, Ferocious Roar is one of the best green spells in the whole game. Green being a terror. Anyway, so when you play it, every creature you control gains +2/+2, +3/+3, or +5/+5, and Breakthrough at level 3. Breakthrough being any damage that a creature takes beyond its health pool is dealt to your opponent as well. So if I attack a 5/5 with my 10/10, then the 5/5 will die, and then you'll take 5 damage because there's 5 extra attack. So that's what Breakthrough does. Normally, we'll be playing the level 1 and 2 Ferocious Roar, and rarely the number 3, although every so often the number 3 provides a game ender, but it's very rare for games to go that long, as this deck is very fast. Level 1 and 2, though, are very strong. And the last buff card, which is a tech card in this case, it's just a one-off because it's very situational but can be extremely good, is Lifeblood Dryad. Now, Lifeblood Dryad, the stats are pretty mediocre, but the effect is why we play it. When you play Lifeblood Dryad, if your board is full, so if you play it, if you have 4 lanes full, and then you play it on the 5th lane, and that would fill your board, all of the creatures on the board gain a buff. So if I play this at level 1 with a full board, it becomes a 6/6 and then gives everything else +1/+1. Then at level 2 it becomes a 10/10 and gives everything else +3/+3. Level 3, 15/15 and everything else gains +6/+6. So the effect is very, very powerful, but the only reason we don't play more than one is because the effect is so situational. If you're playing a very, very even game, this will not help you. If you're playing a game where you're swarming the board and your opponent has very, very few but very large threats, then this is very, very good. Now, onto the actual token producers. So I went over Etherhounds earlier, where it's a 3/3/5/5/7/7. But this one has a bit of a unique element to it, where most token producers you can play in the adjacent lane. So you play a token producer, and then you summon another copy of it in the lane next to it. Etherhounds, however, can be played anywhere. So you can play one Etherhounds in lane 1 on one side of the board, and play the second Etherhounds in lane 5 on the other side of the board. And something else to note is with Tarsus Deathweaver, for example, and Weird Patriarch, even the level 1 is good. You don't even want to level this early, because the level 1 is good at all levels because of the synergies with your actual deck, and you can also use these with Ferocious Roar and such if you want board control early on in the game. So you can go Etherhounds, and sometimes you just go Etherhounds in an open lane, and then trigger it, and then put the second Etherhounds in front of something, and if you have a Tarsus on the board, that second Etherhound will be larger. If you play a level 1 Etherhounds, then you get a 3/3, and then you trigger it, and then you get a 9/9 in front of something else, because it was summoned not from your hand. It wasn't actually played from your hand, so it gains the Tarsus buff. Second token producer, which is arguably the most powerful, and it's also the only legendary in the deck. A lot of people play some of the other legendaries like Leafkin, which that version's called Leaf Weaver, which is a card which levels itself up. Its active is that it levels itself up. When you activate it, it becomes a higher level, bigger stats, and because it summons, it gets larger. If I make a deck with that in, I'll explain the card more when that actually happens. But anyway, Echo Wisp. Echo Wisp is something you play, and then you get a second one next to it. It's adjacent. The reason this card is so powerful is because it's very, very good at blocking. Very, very weak to Epidemic, but very good at blocking, because you can block for 6, trigger next to it, block another thing for 6, and maybe Ferocious Roar and block for 8. Echo Wisp level 2 will also trade with most things if you roar, and Echo Wisp level 3 is one of the most powerful cards in the game for its level. When you play it, you put a copy of Echo Wisp in every single lane. Now, getting 50 attack out of one card is incredible. 50 attack, level 3 Echo Wisp Ferocious Roar is almost game ending, because you get 5, 15 10s with breakthrough. That's almost the end of the game. There's almost no way to come back from that. You need sort of double Epidemics, or a big board position, or some other sort of AoE. Not to mention, another synergy with Echo Wisp is Tarsus is the main one. Weirwood not so much, because the attack is too high, but Tarsus is the main one, where a level 1 Tarsus will make it into an 8/3, level 2 Tarsus with level 2 Echo Wisp will actually make it into a 12/7, which will trade with a lot of things, and the level 3 Echo Wisp synergizes incredibly well with level 3 Tarsus. You have an empty board, you go Tarsus, Echo Wisp. You now have a 15/16 Tarsus, a 10/5 Echo Wisp, and 3 16/11 Echo Wisps. At that point, the game is basically over. This deck has some extremely powerful late game draws. And the final minion-based, or creature-based, depending on your background in card games, token producer is Blight Tusk Sower, which is a card which a lot of people don't play, but I actually really like. Now, Blight Tusk Sower benefits equally, basically, from Tarsus and Weirwood. Slightly more from Tarsus later in the game, slightly more from Weirwood earlier in the game, even though the actual buff is the same. What do I mean by that? Well, Weirwood you want to level earlier and get excuses to level, and it buffs all the tokens at each level. And even the level 1 Weirwood will buff the level 2 token, because it's still 3 attack. Tarsus, however, the effect snacks. So you can play 2 level 3 Tarsus, and I have done this, and then summon a level 2 or even a level 1 Sower and get double triggers and get a massive seedling. But anyway, the actual card, 4, 5, 8, 9, 14, 15. This dodges a lot of removal spells. only colorable, which is an actual card in the deck, so I'll explain that later. But it's only really colorable, you can't Dreadbolt it, you can't burn it, it's really difficult to remove. But it also summons a token. 1/1 token, 3/3 token, 5/5 token. This doesn't sound too strong, but then you can buff them with Tarsus and Weirwood. I have, on several occasions, had 2 Tarsus on the board and summoned a Blighttusk Sower and just got a sapling. Just a 5/5 tree folk with +12/+12. A 17/17 tree folk along with a 14/15. And as I said later on, like this particular version of the deck, a lot of versions of this deck are very, very slow. Like, they're very, very slow later in the game. I mean, they're entirely focused on the early game. They run Ether Hounds out early, they run Leaf Weaver. Their early game is crazy, but their late game is so incredibly slow to kill. They just don't have the big creatures required to force through damage later in the game. So generally, if you survive late, you win. But this deck is playing Weirwood Patriarch, which has incredible stats late game, Tarsus, Blighttusk Sower, Echo Wisp. It's playing so many late game cards that scale incredibly well into late game. Now, the final actual token producer is a card called Phytobomb. Now, Phytobomb at first glance looks terrible. Level 1, put a 1/1 seedling in every lane, yours and your opponent's, and then 3/3 in every lane, and then the level 3 looks decent, 5/5 in every lane, on your side, not on your opponent's. The reason this is powerful is because of its interactions with Tarsus, Ferocious Roar, Lifeblood Dryad, and Weirwood, because it turns on Lifeblood Dryad's effect, and it also gets massive benefits from Ferocious Roar, and even Epidemic. There's so many ways of enabling Phytobomb that I feel as if the card is too powerful to pass up. The only card it has some issues with is Justicar, where Justicar's text says that if something isn't summoned from your hand, then it gets an attack reduction. So that has its issues. But against those matchups, it's only a 2-of. Against Justicar, I don't level token producers apart from Sower. And maybe Echoist if I can get them in between Justicars. I just level my big quality creatures and I don't touch Phytobomb because it's terrible in that matchup. But Phytobomb is very good against things like movement decks because you lock up their side of the board as well and they can no longer move. Things like that. It's just a very powerful card, and sometimes you just get massive board position out of it. Just go Phytobomb into Epidemic and suddenly you have a huge board side and they have nothing. So it's a very, very powerful card, quite underestimated. Now, so that's the key part of the deck in terms of idea and how it wins, so to speak. But what we're going to go over now is the required removal spells. Well, removal spells, and there's actually a removal minion in this deck because I am playing Terra. So, we'll start with the removal spell, which I referenced a little bit earlier, called Cull the Weak. Now, I referenced this in ways of killing Blighttusk Sower. The main reason is, Cull the Weak says that at level 1, destroy a target creature with 4 or less attack. Level 2 is 8, level 3 is 14. Now, this is in the deck because of a card which I'm actually going to show, if I can. Actually, I don't think I have the card, so I won't be able to. Yeah, if I recall correctly, I don't actually have a Thunderstorm at the moment, but it is one of the most popular cards in the game. Thunderstorm is a card which is a 0/12, 0/24, 0/36. It has Breakthrough, and whenever it takes damage, it gains that much attack. So what happens is this thing gets out of control, but sometimes people just put it in front of something expecting you to attack them next turn, and because it has 0 attack, you just cull it. Like, cull a level 3 Thunderstorm with a level 1 cull. Just kill it. Just get it off the board, and that will often be enough to win you the game. This also affects a lot of things like Justicars, because that has 4, 8, 14 attack, specifically. Battle Tactician, which buffs everything on their side of the board, which is 3, 7, 14. That also dies to cull, like at every level. There's lots and lots of things this hits, and that's why it's a 2-of, not a 1-of. Now, next removal spell, which this is a 2-of because it hits literally everything, is Terminate. Now, Terminate is level specific. It only can target things that are its level or lower, but it replaces whatever creature you target with a 3/3. It's basically Tinkmaster for any of you Hearthstone players. It's basically Tinkmaster if it always did the same thing. The one downside is it has to be on the same level, so you need to actually level it. But this is very, very good against some big threat decks like Devourer, where every single time something on the board dies, it gains a boost. You just can't kill it, so you have to Terminate it or Dreadbolt it, and that's your only answer. and also other growth creatures like Predator or even Thunderstorm. Once it gets out of control, this is a very, very powerful removal spell. And the last of the 5 hard removal spells that I'm actually playing is Dreadball. Now, Dreadball deals damage to their health, so it works through armor. Well, the actual wording is it loses life equal to its attack. So this hits anything with higher attack than health, or equal attack and health, which hits a lot of big threats. Again, it's level specific, which is why there's only 1 in the deck, but it is still very, very good. Now, if we actually look at the split here, I've got 2 Cull, 2 Terminate, 1 Dreadball. So what I wanted was, I wanted 3 answers to big, like, creatures I just can't deal with. So I have Terminate and Dreadball, 3. But Terminate hits more targets, so I have 2 Terminate, 1 Dreadball. But then I also wanted 2 Culls in the deck to deal with Thunderswords and Justicars. So now I have 4 answers to Thunderstorm and Justicar, and 3 answers to all the big stuff that I can chump block, but I'd rather not, I'd rather just kill it. So the actual deck has enough removal in it to sustain the aggressive strategy. The last 2 removal spells I'm going to go over are Gemhide Basher, which is actually a minion that's a removal, and Epidemic, which I've talked a lot about as an actual counter to this deck. Now, Gemhide Basher gains aggressive, so charge, when there's another creature in the lane. So you play it, and after you play it, if there's something opposite it, it gains aggressive and it attacks straight away. It doesn't have to wait a turn. That's the strength of this particular card. So what does this hit? It has 5, 10, 16 attack. The health is pretty much irrelevant, because if they really want to kill it, they just play something with any attack whatsoever in front of it on their turn, and it'll attack into it. Terrible to play on an open board. However, the actual card hits pretty much everything you need to kill. The level 1 hits Leafkin, and Predators, and Devourers, and any threat possible. And even helps with things like Gargoyles, which are very difficult to deal with, and is also one of the best counters in the entire game to Arclight Squadron at all levels. Also hits things like Savants, if you don't want triggering, and in mono-color decks, it just hits everything you need to do. Not to mention, you can also buff this thing up with Roar, and it will hit even more targets. With Roar, it'll hit Battle Tactician at all levels, which is incredible. And will actually, it won't live the Battle Tactician, at level 3 at least, but it will most likely just kill it straight up. If you have the appropriate level drawer, it will live it, but the chances of you having the appropriate level drawer at level 3 is really low. So just one level 1 roar will deal with any Battle Tactician or General, which is very, very useful. The card is amazing. Level it when you need it, and it's just an out as a creature, and sometimes you just play it on an open board just to trigger a Lifeblood Dryad. But there's so many creatures in the deck that you actually find you don't have to do that often. And the last card in the deck we're going to go over is Epidemic, which I brought up earlier. It's a spell where every single creature your opponent controls gets -2 attack, -2 health, -4, -4, -6, -6. This is the best level 1 spell in the game, basically. For late game, it's the best level 1 spell in the game. It just is. You don't need to level this. Play it when you need it. If they're leveled, it's cool, but you don't actually need them leveled. And that is why the card is so powerful. It is AoE that does not need to be leveled, but when it is leveled, it scales incredibly well. And that is why the actual card is good. It's an AoE that you can use to get your valuable trades. You can just Epidemic their board to negate a Ferocious Roar if they actually are playing that, or a Weird Patriarch trigger. And you can use it with things like Phytobomb, so they don't gain any board advantage whatsoever. Or Echo Wisp, if you're playing against Echo Wisp, it works really well. Or even just to cut down some of the attack on some things. It's a very versatile card and is played in a lot of matchups. So anyway, that's the actual deck. I'm going to cut to a game that I'm gonna play, and we'll just go over some of the decision making, and then we'll call it a day. So anyway, we are back, and we're back, and we're playing against Vortex or Vor73X. V0, whatever, anyway. Turn 1, this is a very easy play for me. I'm going first, so I only have 1 action, and I'm just going to go with the Echo Wisp. Probably should have put that in the middle, actually, just in case I drew a Ferocious Roar to deal with Battle Tactician. This turn, I would love to be Tarsus Echo Wisp. And he's playing that deck. So yes, it is in fact going to be Tarsus Echo Wisp. He's playing a Spring Dryad where every single time a creature is summoned on his side of the board, it gains health and attack. And he's also playing another Tarsus deck. Now I'm gonna put the buffed up Echo Wisp in front of this Tarsus so that Ferocious Roar won't save it. In the mirror match, the most crucial cards are Tarsus Deathweaver and Sower and Echo Wisp, and arguably Weirwood, but both sides have Weirwood, so they sort of cancel. Tarsus is incredibly difficult to deal with. Second Tarsus, and he's gonna deal with my Tarsus. Okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and level my value creatures. My Weirwood Patriarch gets a little bit of value on the sapling, turning it into a 5/5 from the effect. But more importantly, I level some extra creatures. Currently, we have both leveled 2 Tarsus. I have leveled a Weirwood. We have both leveled an Echo Wisp. He's leveled 2 Terminates. I've leveled 1 extra Echo Wisp. So this is fairly weird overall. I think I'm just gonna go for the Sower. I prefer Sower over Aether Hounds, even though Aether Hounds is more powerful. I already have board advantage, so I'd rather just go for the Sower because it levels better. Aether Hounds with Weirwood is better. What the hell did I just knock over? Anyway, because they would both become 5/5s as opposed to a 4/5 and a 3/3, but leveling Blight Sower is so much better. Instead of 5/5 and a 5/5, you get an 8/9 and a 3/3, which then benefits from even the level 1 Weirwood. It's just much better in stats. This would appear to be a level 2 Tarsus, and I want to play this Echo Wisp, but I'm actually going to Ferocious Roar here. Simply because it kills a Tarsus and I don't want to replace creatures, I'd rather get in for damage. Again, this is why I play a lot of spells and removal spells, is because I have a full board, so I'd rather just be removing his stuff as opposed to focusing on having to replace my own creatures with more valuable stuff. Okay, I'm just gonna go for the Sower, again like this, so that these 2 slots are open, because the sapling benefits from the Tarsus, so it's not as much of a thing, but it's still something to note. Second Roar, and I think this game is basically over. This really does show the incredible speed of this deck. This game has only been going on for about 4 minutes, and generally the game is decided before rank 3. That's just how fast the actual deck is. Game is decided before rank 3, and I do believe I have lethal, and that is a good game. 4-minute kill. Now, that happens a lot, but there's also situations where you just don't win. You just don't win, and you get stalled out, and as a result, you get massacred. But, that was a pretty good game. The deck actually worked the way it's supposed to. Really showcased what I can do with the deck, with summoning tokens and buffing them all up, and just swarming the board and overwhelming your opponent. Apparently Moon is playing Rust. Okay. But anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, put it in the comment section below. Next week, for the weekly, I will be doing a tournament overview of what happened in the tournament with my games, and going over some of the things I could actually improve with the deck and things like that. But anyway, this has been Jotto, signing off.